She took a bullet meant for her disabled brother, and the mafia boss broke down weeping. Lucian Varley thought he was the monster of this story until he watched his sweet, invisible housekeeper sprint directly into a Mexican standoff. Rival mobsters thought blackmailing her about a childhood arson case would make her break. Instead, she chose death, forcing the most dangerous man in the city to realize he was hopelessly in love with a liar. Picture the scene: a torrential Manhattan downpour, the kind trying to scrub the city's conscience clean. For 14 months, Emma survived by being invisible, quietly wiping away the sins of a ruthless crime syndicate. But tonight the shadows catch up. 3 men block her path in a suffocating alley. They aren't looking for money. They want to use her to send a violent message. As the first devastating blow lands, her mind jumps to her brother, Caleb. Yet destiny has a twisted sense of irony. Instead of dying in the mud, she wakes up beneath blinding crystal chandeliers, staring into the eyes of New York's deadliest kingpin. You and I will unpack this together, because it reveals a profound truth. The most dangerous place to stand isn't in the dark, but right under the spotlight. Let's trace the origins of this nightmare. A grandfather clock strikes 11, its hollow chime echoing through the sprawling corridors. Emma leans into a heavy industrial mop, her body protesting. Her joints ache, her hands cracked and raw from harsh chemicals. She is 6 hours into an agonizing shift, with 2 dragging ahead. In an environment built on ruthless violence, the only way to stay alive is to erase yourself completely. You polish the marble, scrub the crimson stains from the floor, and hide your curiosity. Above all, you never look closely at the architect of it all, Lucian Varley. His name alone carries the weight of a loaded gun. We often think keeping our heads down keeps us safe, but the truth is, silencing your own voice to survive only invites others to write your story. She had glimpsed the boss exactly 11 times before tonight, always from the periphery, watching his tailored silhouette slice through rooms with the cold precision of a blade. He carried an aura that made hardened men forget to breathe. A sudden voice shatters her trance. It is Clara, the head housekeeper, the sole source of humanity in this sprawling mausoleum, the only one who uses Emma's actual name. Clara gently urges her to leave, but Emma simply nods toward a fresh stain. Extra hours mean extra wages, which means another physical therapy session for Caleb. This is what genuine devotion looks like. Real sacrifice rarely makes a grand spectacle of itself. It simply absorbs the pain, ignores the exhaustion, and quietly finishes the work that needs to be done for the people we love. Clara drops her professional armor for a moment, warning her about the storm. Emma stows her supplies, pulls on her threadbare coat, and slips into the October night. The wind bites into her skin, the atmosphere thick with the metallic scent of impending chaos. She only has 4 blocks to the subway. Paradoxically, because these streets sit deep inside Varley territory, they are considered the safest in the city. Petty criminals avoid the area, fearing the syndicate. Emma has walked this route hundreds of times in peace. But tonight, the street feels wrong. The flickering street lamps cast distorted shadows. A primal instinct flares at the base of her skull. It reminds us to always trust our intuition. When your inner voice screams that danger is approaching, you must listen. She pushes her tired legs faster as the rain begins slapping the concrete. Then she hears it, deliberate footsteps splashing behind her. Her chest tightens with a panic she frantically tries to suppress. She takes a sharp left into a familiar alley to break the pursuit, but the footsteps turn with her. Her heartbeat drowns out the storm. The warm glow of the subway is visible just ahead, Suddenly, a figure steps from a dark alcove, severing her escape. His stance is relaxed yet predatory. He stares her down, casually asking if she works for the Varley family. Fear is a paralyzing venom. Instead of running, her body freezes entirely. It is a stark reminder that all our rational logic simply vanishes the second true terror takes over. She tries to project calm, forcing a steady voice as she denies knowing the syndicate. That illusion shatters when a cruel sneer echoes behind her. Emma spins around. Two imposing figures detach from the darkness. They had tracked her from the estate. The storm unleashes blinding sheets of rain. Panic takes over. She pleads, insisting she is entirely insignificant, just a cleaner. The leader steps forward, a jagged scar across his brow. He smiles with cold malice, explaining that her innocence makes her the perfect canvas for their message. It is a tragic reality. When caught in the crossfire of dangerous men, your innocence offers no protection. She lunges for the street, but a brutal hand seizes her coat, violently hurling her into the shadows of the alley. Before she can scream, a fist connects with her jaw. A blinding flash of pain erupts, followed by the metallic taste of blood. The scarred man mutters a hollow justification, drowned by the ringing in her ears. A second strike buries into her ribs with a sickening fracture, and Emma collapses. She tries to curl up, but heavy boots drive into her spine. Each breath becomes a gasp of fire. Yet, in this crucible of suffering, one anchor holds her together. Caleb. If she perishes, her brother falls too. Let's recognize the profound power of love here. True purpose gives you the strength to push upward, even as your bones splinter. She fights the agony to rise, but a devastating kick catches her ribs, driving her face into the bitter mud. The assault halts when the leader barks a command. Their cruelty requires her to stay alive. A corpse cannot deliver a message to Varley. The thugs cannot retreat into the rain. Emma is left bleeding on the asphalt, her vision turning dark. Her last sensation is the rumble of the subway beneath her, a normal life she will never board. Much later, a piercing brightness pries her eyelids apart. She recoils, her body feeling like shattered glass. A calm voice instructs her to stay still, noting her broken ribs and a concussion. Forcing her eyes to adjust, she realizes the gutter is gone. Above her hang opulent crystal chandeliers. It reminds us that sometimes surviving a brutal storm only places you directly inside the eye of a much deadlier hurricane. Through the haze of her concussion, she focuses on an older man by the bed. His eyes carry the weary weight of someone who patches up syndicate soldiers. He wears a medical coat over a tailored suit. She tries to speak, but her throat is like ash. He offers water before dismantling her reality. She is inside the private fortress of Lucien Varley. Stick with me here. This is where the dynamics of power shift entirely. Ignoring the agonizing protest of her ribs, Emma throws off the covers to reach Caleb. Before the physician can stop her, an imposing shadow eclipses the doorway. An unyielding voice slices through the room, stating that her brother is already there. True power does not just lock you in a cage. It casually brings everything you love into the cage right alongside you. Imagine a presence so commanding it alters the room air pressure. Emma's gaze snaps to the doorway. Lucien Varley stands there, projecting absolute sovereignty. In a flawless suit, his features seem chiseled from ice. As his eyes lock onto hers, fear paralyzes her lungs. In a flat, emotionless voice, he recites the intimate details of her life. He names Caleb, paralyzed and isolated. The violation of her privacy is staggering. She whispers, asking how he knows this. He glides forward like an apex predator, explaining he oversees every detail in his domain. He admits he he knew she scrubbed his floors for a year, yet never learned her name. It is a harsh truth about the elite. They only see you when you become a liability to their empire. Gathering her courage, she answers, "Emma Vale." He repeats her name, testing the syllables. He dismantles her privacy, listing her $118,000 in medical debt and 3 grueling jobs. Every statistic is a physical blow. She tries to look away, but his gaze pins her down. Lucien reveals Caleb is in the East Wing, receiving elite care from a private nurse. Emma is blindsided, demanding his motives. His expression hardens. He claims she was assaulted in his territory. Being on his payroll makes her his absolute property. He views the attack as a personal failure, and this lavish rescue is his correction. Notice how toxic control operates here. Men like Lucien never offer a genuine apology. They simply rewrite the rules to fit their massive egos. A sharp look from him silences the doctor instantly. Lucien does not blink. He calmly reveals the thugs belong to Victor Kravik, a rival boss starting a turf war. They used her broken body as a violent telegram. Emma pleads, swearing she is just a ghost who mops floors. To Lucien, her innocence is irrelevant. He dictates that anyone in his domain falls under his absolute protection. The men who attacked her are already facing a gruesome reckoning. We know exactly what kind of brutal theater that entails. Terrified, she begs to be left out of this mafia war. Wanting only to return to her life, Lucien cuts her off with glacial finality. Her personal desires no longer matter. The lesson is grim. Once the shadows claim you, your illusion of free will vanishes entirely. She is officially a pawn in his game. You and I have to recognize the exact moment a gilded trap snaps shut. Lucien casually drops a devastating revelation, informing Emma that her rent, medical bills, and her brother's care are entirely paid for, handled just like that. Emma is frantic, instinctively refusing his money, but Lucien confronts her with cold certainty. The deal is finalized. Locking her in like a vault, he claims he is correcting his own failure and her old life is officially erased. She must accept his protection or become a casualty. Emma calls it captivity, but here is a simple life lesson. Sometimes the people who save you from the fire are merely placing you in a shinier cage. Lucien does not care what she calls it, as long as she stays. Lucien drops his voice to a low, dangerous rumble. She is not leaving until this mess is resolved. Emma stares at this crime boss managing her existence like an asset. Sitting there with fractured ribs, she spits pure fire, demanding he understand he does not own her. Lucien gets a terrifying flash in his eyes. He freely admits he does not own her, but he is entirely responsible for her now. He steps out and locks the heavy door behind him, sealing it like a cell. Emma realizes her quiet reality is wiped out, traded for a beautifully decorated nightmare. The life lesson here is harsh but true. Fighting a rip current only makes you drown faster. Hours later, Emma jolts awake to absolute blackness and the horrifying sound of someone screaming. It takes 3 agonizing seconds for Emma to realize the terrible screaming is tearing from her own throat. She shoots up in bed, her ribs screaming in protest, but strong hands instantly pin her shoulders down. A nurse tells her to breathe, stopping her from ripping out her medical lines. Emma is hyperventilating in the dark, desperately begging to know where Caleb is. The nurse calmly mentions her brother is safely asleep on the 3rd floor, exactly as the boss commanded. Emma demands to see him, so the nurse shifts her battered body into a wheelchair. It is a harsh reminder of her helplessness. Yet, here is a solid life lesson. Sometimes knowing when to let someone else push the wheels is the only way you survive. They glide down a silent corridor until they reach room 7. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? We finally see the singular anchor keeping Emma from losing her grip on sanity. Caleb rests in a high-tech hospital bed, monitors softly beeping. Emma rolls up and grabs his hand as if dangling over a cliff. Caleb opens his eyes, looks at her battered face, and bluntly tells her she looks like absolute garbage. She just smiles through the pain, asking if the men hurt him. 2 guys in suits simply scooped him up to keep him safe. He genuinely thought Emma had died, and his young voice shatters. Emma smooths his hair, reminding him they both survived. Life teaches us that the strongest bonds are always forged in the worst conditions. Meanwhile, Caleb is amazed by the luxury, bragging about real doctors and eating off fine china. Caleb asks who this mysterious benefactor is, and Emma admits the man is dangerous. He cannot figure out why a criminal boss cares about them, and Emma has no logical explanation. Then Caleb drops a massive bombshell. He reveals Lucien paid off every single cent of her debt. Emma freezes. We are talking 6 figures of soul-crushing debt, wiped clean. Yet Emma is furious, swearing they do not take charity. Caleb snaps back, telling her this is not charity, it is survival. The kid makes a profound point. The real-life lesson here is that foolish pride will never keep your lungs drawing breath. Emma knows how the underworld operates. Powerful men like Lucien never hand out favors. Every gift is a calculated trap, and they simply do not know the price tag yet. Caleb tells her they will deal with the fallout when the bill finally comes due. Right now, he has a comfortable bed, and she is not bleeding out in an alley. That is a massive victory. Emma desperately wants to list every way this mafia favor will blow up in their faces, but heavy exhaustion wipes her out. Over the next 3 days, her reality is a blurry haze of painkillers. Her cracked ribs feel like shattered glass, and her head is pounding. But here is a beautiful life lesson hidden in the trauma. Sometimes you simply have to endure the terrible storm so the people you love can stay dry. Caleb is finally eating warm meals and smiling again. Seeing her little brother genuinely thrive makes this impending bargain with the devil feel like a trade she would gladly make. You might be wondering the same thing I did about isolation. Sometimes the crushing silence inside a mansion is far scarier than the chaos of the streets. Emma does not see the boss for days. Clara pops in with idle gossip while a quiet nurse patches up Emma's injuries. The boss remains a ghost. Then day 4 arrives. Clara stands over her with an intense look, announcing Mr. Vari wants to see her immediately. It is not a polite request. Getting dressed feels like walking toward an execution. Emma wanders through the polished hallways. She once scrubbed on her knees. Life teaches us that our biggest upgrades often come wrapped in our deepest fears. They stop at a massive wooden door. One knock. Lucien's heavy voice bleeds through the oak, commanding them to enter. This grand study is a display of insane wealth, with giant bookshelves and chairs costing more than Emma earns in a year. Lucien stares out the window, not turning when he tells her to sit. Her bruised ribs scream as she drops into the leather. He calmly notes she is healing, and Caleb is thriving. Emma swallows her bitter pride and forces a thank you, but the words taste like poison. Lucien spins around, his face like cold stone, but his eyes blazing. He warns her never to thank him again. He leans on his desk, barely hiding the predator underneath. A harsh life lesson is that favors from the dark are never truly wiped clean. Then Lucien drops the hammer. He casually mentions he found the 3 guys who attacked her, and with a little motivation, they were eager to talk. Emma blurts out, asking exactly what he did to them. Lucian gives a hollow look and says he did what was necessary. He coldly explains a rival named Krovic sent those goons to test his grip on power. Emma is furious, accusing him of using her trauma to protect his reputation. Lucian locks eyes with hers, stating that any public sign of weakness will destroy his empire. Emma grips her chair, insisting she is not part of his staff. Lucian shuts that delusion down instantly. She is locked into his world now. The ultimate life lesson here is that begging a monster for safety often traps you inside a prettier cage. Krovic knows her name. He knows about Caleb. If Emma walks away, she dies. To Lucian, keeping her protected and keeping her locked up are exactly the same thing. Stick with me here, because we are watching an intense emotional standoff. Emma stares down Lucian, clutching her last shred of dignity. The man literally tells her anger is good because it keeps her sharp. Honestly, she is terrified. She yells about how she spent years building her independence to protect her brother, and this crime boss deleted her life in 4 days. Lucian does not blink, claiming he gave her safety. Emma bitterly calls it a prison. Lucian hits back in that frightening voice, reminding her it is a prison that keeps her breathing. She wants to run so desperately, but knows Caleb is finally safe inside these walls. It is a harsh truth, but sometimes the very things that trap us are the only things keeping us alive. Love really is the ultimate cage. And just like that, the iron door of her cage clicks shut. She asks how long she must stay, and Lucian goes totally silent. It is that heavy silence before a storm. Finally, he admits she is stuck until he destroys his rival, Krovic. Emma is crying, telling him straight to his face that she hates him. But consider this sin. Sometimes pure hate is the only bridge holding two broken people together. Lucian agrees, saying at least she will be alive to hate him. Suddenly, a massive enforcer with a huge scar busts through the door. Absolute chaos. He announces Krovic just robbed a shipment, dropped 6 guys, and stole $500,000. The room instantly turns freezing cold. Lucian asks when. The enforcer drops the bomb. 20 minutes ago, and he left a message. The scarred enforcer is sweating, terrified to speak. Lucian clenches his fists, demanding the message. The goon stammers. Krovic warned Emma was just the beginning. Lucian must choose between his syndicate and his new pet. Emma is completely frozen. For 3 agonizing seconds, Lucian stops breathing. You know, a person's true nature always reveals itself when pushed to the edge. Lucian snaps. He grabs a crystal paperweight and hurls it into the wall. It shatters like a gunshot. He screams at the guy to get out, entirely losing his icy composure. Emma tries to sneak away, but he barks her name. His back remains turned, his shoulders shaking with pure rage. He whispers that this nightmare only ends when one of them is dead. Emma runs down the hall until her legs give out. Emma slides down the expensive wallpaper, her bruised ribs screaming. You and I both know how awful it feels to carry guilt you did not earn. 6 men died because some street punks cornered her in an alley. Now this syndicate is tearing itself apart over a girl who used to mop floors. Lucian is plotting bloody revenge just to keep her safe. Marcus eventually finds her and carries her to bed, but she remains wide awake, haunted by the image of Lucian snapping. Outside, Krovic is celebrating his victory, while Lucian is sharpening his knives for war. Emma locks herself away in her room for 2 whole days. Honestly, who could blame her? Sometimes stepping back from the ledge is the only way to protect your fragile peace of mind. Let us step into day 3 of this quiet nightmare. Caleb maneuvers his wheelchair into her room, his blunt remarks about her exhaustion masking a deep, fraternal terror. Emma sits hollowed out, her gaze lost in the city skyline. When he pushes for the truth, the dam finally breaks. She weeps under the phantom weight of 6 dead men, convinced her existence is a curse. But Caleb refuses to let her drown. He catches her trembling hand, grounding her with brutal clarity. Those men perished because they challenged an apex predator, not because of her. You and I must remember this. Surviving a hurricane does not mean you summoned the wind. The greatest lesson here is releasing the guilt of things beyond our control. Sometimes, we must simply let the monsters destroy each other. Emma remains paralyzed by an ocean of guilt. She believes she is seeking shelter, but Caleb urges her to begin the true work of healing. She wants to anchor herself to his logic, yet the phantom of Lucian promising total destruction haunts her every blink. She begs Caleb to flee. He dismantles this fragile fantasy. Flee to where? Back to a decaying apartment where predators can discard them. Back to fracturing her ribs for a few bills. He forces her to confront the fatal flaw of their independence. To walk away out of pure pride is to welcome their own end. The lesson we find in Caleb's defiance is profound. True resilience is not always standing completely alone. Sometimes, the ultimate act of courage is simply allowing someone with a much larger shield to stand in front of you. Emma lingers by the glass until noon, desperately trying to resurrect the protective rage that fueled her after her mother passed. But that fire has burned to absolute ash, leaving a hollow cavity in her chest. Seeking motion to quiet her mind, she drifts through the cavernous manor until she stumbles upon the basement gym. A harsh glare bleeds from a cracked door. Survival instincts scream at her to retreat, yet she freezes. Inside the concrete space, Lucian is systematically destroying a heavy bag, striking with the rhythmic violence of a machine. It is a sobering reflection of our shared human nature. We often search desperately for our own lost spark, only to find ourselves mesmerized by a dangerous new flame, forgetting that this wild heat could easily reduce our entire world to cinders. She spots a jagged bullet scar on his shoulder, a permanent receipt of his violent life. He is sculpted for pure combat, moving with the terrifying grace of an apex predator. Suddenly, he stops the heavy bag. His dark gaze snaps to the doorway, pinning her in place. The silence floods the room, heavy enough to choke on. He advances, and though her instincts beg her to flee, Emma remains rooted. He stops inches away, radiating a dangerous mix of hatred and raw adrenaline. He growls a warning about her wandering. She feigns innocence, claiming she is lost, but he dismantles the lie instantly. You and I must acknowledge a profound truth here. We rarely wander blindly through life. More often than not, we subconsciously navigate the dark until we stand exactly where our deepest unspoken desires secretly demand we go. Clutching her ribs, Emma notes her talent for trespassing in dangerous territory. A ghost of amusement softens his features. Prodding this kingpin is foolish, but defiance anchors her stance. He asks about her recovery, and she answers plainly, offering an update on Caleb. Lucian replies with a weighted nod. The pressure between them is suffocating. She shatters the quiet, confronting him about the blood spilled on her behalf. His expression calcifies into stone, demanding she ignore the rumors, but she pushes the terrifying question. Is this war truly about her? It requires immense courage to ask if you are the catalyst for a tragedy. The lesson here is clear. It takes even greater wisdom to bravely accept a painful truth without ever turning your eyes away from the mirror. Lucian invades her space, his shadow engulfing her. He dismisses his rival as a fraudulent king, weaponizing her existence to ignite a slaughter. When she challenges his next move, he He retreats behind the armor of a boss, claiming he will do what is necessary. He commands her to leave, but this sparks the dormant fire within Emma. She steps into his gravity. How can she ignore a war where men bleed because she breathes? Lucian pivots, radiating lethality, asking if she desires the grotesque mechanics of his vengeance. She holds her ground, finished with living as a pawn. Let us examine this crucial pivot together. Clinging to ignorance may offer a brief sanctuary, but running from reality guarantees a far more devastating wound than simply facing the absolute worst truths head-on. We must pause to dissect this shift. He closes the distance until she is forced to tilt her chin to meet his gaze. He rejects the notion that she is a pawn. She is a variable his wealth cannot manage. Her voice drops to a whisper, pleading to take Caleb and disappear. His hands curl into iron fists. He delivers a grim prophecy. Fleeing will not sever the thread tying her to his name. She strikes back, questioning if she is a possession in his gilded cage. Instantly, the terrifying boss facade fractures. He whispers that control is the furthest thing from his mind. His sole obsession is her survival. We see a profound human tragedy here. We often confuse safety with captivity, forgetting that the strongest cages in this life are forged from a desperate, terrifying kind of care. The psychological tension here is staggering. Emma reaches her breaking point, demanding to know why a syndicate architect would anchor himself to a maid. Lucian begins to crack. He tries to hide behind the logistics of duty, but she shatters his defense. The stress fractures his composure until he begs her to retreat. Hearing a desperate plea from a king of the streets reveals his total undoing. Emma spends the night wrestling with his admission, haunted by the apocalyptic way he looked at her. Hours later, the quiet manor shatters. She slips into the corridor as angry voices announce the death of the treaty. War has arrived. This forces us to confront a brutal truth. When a terrifying force of nature looks at you as though you are his sole weakness, it is inevitably because you already are. Let us examine this sequence together. In the dead of night, Emma is paralyzed in the corridor. Behind the heavy doors, an elder proposes a transactional sacrifice to halt the slaughter. The currency? Surrendering Emma. Lucian responds with a glacial threat, daring the man to finish his sentence. The negotiation ends instantly with the catastrophic sound of splintering wood. Lucian expels the men, his voice vibrating with untethered wrath. 3 seasoned enforcers flee, their faces painted with primal terror. Another violent crash echoes from within the sanctum. Reason dictates that Emma should vanish into the shadows. Yet the profound lesson here is this. Sometimes the hardest wisdom we acquire is knowing when to seek shelter from a storm, and when we must boldly walk directly into its violent center. Rather than fading away, Emma reclaims her agency and knocks on the shattered door. Lucian roars a blind command to stay out, but the viciousness evaporates the moment he registers her presence. The study is a portrait of devastation. Furniture is reduced to kindling, and Lucian stands by the window, fresh blood weeping from his knuckles. She asks flatly if he intends to trade her to his rivals. He tracks her like a wounded beast, closing the distance as he vows never to commodify her. Emma meets his intensity with a piercing reality check. She is not an object to be possessed. The desperate fear in his eyes halts him entirely. This exchange reveals a tragic paradox. We attempt to cage the very things we are most terrified of losing, forgetting that a human soul can never truly be owned. The emotional undercurrents here are profound. Lucian is acutely aware of how she recoils from his shadow, treating him as a wealthy warden. Stripped of his armor, he delivers a staggering confession. His underworld empire is meaningless if it cannot shield her. When Emma argues they are strangers, he dismantles the lie. He has studied the quiet dignity in how she breaks her body to sustain her brother. His trembling fists expose his guilt for pulling her into his orbit. Asked why he cares, his answer is absolute. He would reduce the city to ash before letting anyone harm her. True connection rarely arrives with logic. It is a terrifying revelation when a total stranger becomes the only pillar keeping your fractured reality from a complete collapse. The atmosphere inside that ruined study borders on the mythological. Every instinct screams at Emma to flee, yet she actively overrides her fear. Reaching out, she takes the bloody wrist of this underworld sovereign. She bypasses his bravado, demanding medical supplies. Sweeping aside the debris of his rage, she instructs the most lethal man in the city to sit down. Miraculously, the Titan obeys. She steps into his intimate space to sanitize his wounds, warning him of the chemical bite. He accepts the searing pain, welcoming the sting without a tremor. Let us reflect on this beautiful conclusion. In the bleakest corridors of our existence, authentic healing frequently begins with a courageous act of empathy directed precisely at the monster we are most conditioned to fear. Let us examine this moment together. Lucian sat in absolute silence, his heavy gaze leaving Emma with trembling hands. He murmured that she owed him nothing, reminding her she was still his prisoner. But as she bandaged his wounds, Emma shattered that illusion. She confessed he was not her captor, but the only reason she still had a pulse. The air in the room seemed to freeze. A sudden fracture of raw hope and terror broke through the mafia boss's mask. He whispered, asking if there was even a difference anymore. Emma held his torn hand, admitting she was still figuring that out. Then his fingers gently brushed her jaw. We build such massive walls to protect ourselves, never realizing the tragedy is when those walls block out the ones trying to love us. His touch carried a heartbreaking gentleness. He murmured that she had every right to despise him, and she confessed she was trying her hardest to do just that. Neither pulled away. Then, heavy boots hammered against the floorboards, shattering the quiet. Emma jolted backward as his lead enforcer pushed into the room. In a fraction of a second, the vulnerable man vanished, replaced by the cold boss of the syndicate. The news was a waking nightmare. A rival family had slaughtered 8 of their men and bombed a neighborhood cafe, harming innocent bystanders just to force a meeting. Emma felt physically ill hearing the casualty report. It is a grim reality of our world. The innocent always pay the heaviest tax when powerful men decide to play their bitter, violent games of pride. Lucian turned rigid. When his voice finally broke the silence, it carried the weight of destruction. He ordered the meeting for midnight, entirely ignoring warnings of an obvious ambush. The warmth drained from his eyes. Emma watched the man she just bandaged transform into a living weapon, prepared to shed blood. Gripped by panic, she demanded to know what would happen if he fell. Without a flinch, he revealed his contingency. He had already secured cash, a hidden shelter, and guards for her and her brother. She fired back that his wealth meant nothing, but his stone expression silenced her. He simply ordered her to lock the door and wait. It is a profound tragedy when a person measures their entire value by the physical safety they can purchase for the ones they hold dear. Let us look at this together. His parting instructions were pulled from a nightmare. Lucian stepped close, ordering her to fight with everything she had if the enemy breached the walls. He pleaded with her to do whatever was necessary to survive. She wanted to scream, but The desperation in his eyes proved he needed her agreement. She whispered her vow. The moment the door shut, her legs gave out. The following day was a slow torture. She hid with her brother, pasting on a brave smile while men prepared the estate for slaughter. We often think the worst part of any battle is the violence itself. In truth, the deepest agony is the suffocating silence, sitting alone in the dark while you wait for the conflict to finally kick down your door. The tension fractured past 6 in the evening. Her young brother, Caleb, was trembling, sensing the doom settling over the house. Even the seasoned guards were sweating, a terrifying warning sign. Emma confessed that Lucian had left to confront the man hunting them. When Caleb asked why the boss would risk his life, she offered a lie about protecting the neighborhood. She buried the truth that he was marching into a trap entirely for her. Caleb's voice was heartbreakingly small as he asked if the man was ever coming back. Emma gripped his hand, admitting she did not know. She swore they would survive, even as the words felt hollow. True courage is rarely about feeling fearless. Often it is simply projecting calm certainty to protect others, even when your own world hangs by a thread. Emma paced her room, jumping at every creak of the house. She tried to convince herself he was just a dangerous criminal who derailed her life. Yet the ache in her chest betrayed the truth. Minutes before midnight, she slipped down to the foyer as he descended the stairs. He was draped in black, projecting the cold aura of death itself. His voice was freezing as he instructed her to stay out of sight. With shaking breaths, she asked if he was taking an army. He shook his head. Just 4 men. A quiet display of power, deliberately small to prevent an immediate massacre. He closed the distance, capturing her gaze. The mind will construct 1,000 logical reasons to flee from danger, but a deeply invested heart will always anchor you in place. Picture this scene with me. The king of the underworld is standing in his hallway, speaking calmly about giving his life for something meaningful. Emma is suffocating under panic, pleading with him to stop talking, like a man walking to his grave. Then, this merciless boss softens completely. He gently tucks a strand of hair behind her ear and confesses that she holds far more value to him than his entire empire. He demands she take her brother and run the second things fail. Assuring her the passports are prepared, she grips his wrist, demanding he survive this nightmare. You and I both know the truth here. Genuine love is never found in extravagant wealth. It is found in the quiet, terrifying promise a person makes right before stepping into the fire to shield you from the flames. Lucian rested his forehead against hers to offer a tragic farewell. But Emma refused the ending he was writing. Her fingers twisted into his shirt, swearing that if he died tonight, she would hate him forever. A quiet laugh escaped him as he noted her hatred was barely a threat. She fiercely replied it was the only weapon she had left. We often find that when facing darkness, a stubborn, defiant hope is the greatest anchor we possess. Outside, an engine roared to life. He whispered his time was up, yet neither moved. Then, without warning, he pulled her in for a desperate kiss. It was no gentle romance, but a collision of panic and survival. He swore he would return, and in a single breath, he vanished into the shadows, leaving her completely alone to the suffocating silence. As the tires faded into the dark, the reality of the impending bloodbath settled over the estate. Emma locked herself away, paralyzed by the torture of waiting. The clock stretched the hours from 1 into the freezing quiet of 2, then 3. It highlights a painful truth. We often only recognize the true depth of our devotion when we face the absolute terror of losing someone The sprawling mansion felt like a tomb as she prayed for the ruthless man who preserved her spirit. Then, before dawn, the silence shattered. Heavy boots slammed against the marble floors in chaotic rhythm. Ignoring the sharp pain of her ribs, Emma bolted toward the foyer, only to freeze in pure horror. 4 battered enforcers were desperately dragging a motionless fifth man through the front doors. Witness this moment with me. The fallen figure was Lucian, his clothes saturated in a horrifying amount of blood. Emma felt the room spin, staring at the crimson pool staining the marble. Yet, in a stunning display of willpower, he lifted his heavy head. He locked his failing eyes with hers and offered a weak smile. He murmured that he kept his promise right before his legs surrendered. Emma's scream tore through the hall as he collapsed. She fell to her knees, trembling hands hovering over his chest. We learn a profound lesson here. The purest loyalty reveals itself when chaos reigns and we are stripped of all power. She begged him to stay awake, screaming for the medic. The guard swore help was 2 minutes away, but looking at his fading face, Emma knew his time was already spent. Emma pressed her bare hands against his wounds, fighting to stem the blood while demanding what happened. An exhausted enforcer muttered the meeting was a trap. They walked into a slaughter, outnumbered 5-1. Panic surged through Emma as she asked why he stepped into such an obvious snare. Despite his fading strength, Lucian squeezed her fingers, whispering he had to end the threat permanently. It presents a terrifying reality. Sometimes, the only path to lasting peace is walking willingly into the center of the inferno. Through her tears, she asked if the war was truly over. With a blood-stained grin, he confirmed the rival leader was dead. It was a massive victory. But as the heavy doors burst open to reveal the underground surgeon, Emma wept, terrified the price of that peace was his life. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? The medical team scrambles, shouting for 4 units of blood as they throw Lucian onto a stretcher. Emma is pushed aside, his fingers tearing from hers, leaving slick, red streaks across her palms. It is the visual equivalent of a broken lifeline. Even fading toward death, he chokes out her name, pleading with her to stay. She grabs his hand fiercely, swearing she is planted right there. They rush down the mansion corridors toward a hidden operating suite, a space designed for the fallout of a crime syndicate. What we learn here is brutal but necessary. Some grand estates are never truly homes, only gilded fortresses concealing immense darkness. The doctor blocks the sterile doors, ordering her to stay back. She wants to fight her way inside, but Lucian spends his final ounce of strength begging her to remain in the hall. Emma is prepared to tear those doors off their hinges, but the fractured look in his eyes paralyzes her. Even bleeding out, he is shielding her from the trauma of watching him get cut open. She grips his ice-cold fingers one last time, commanding him to fight the Reaper and survive. He closes his eyes, offering a soft vow that he will always find his way back to her. The heavy steel doors slam and lock. Emma is left entirely alone in the dim hallway, staring at the drying rust color on her skin, as the walls seem to cave in around her. The scarred security guard approaches, his voice gentle as he tells her she needs to rest. The deepest lesson of our human experience is accepting that the hardest battle is often sitting helplessly while fate flips a coin. She tries to maintain her armor, but her body is vibrating with shock. The guard admits the blade struck deep, risking massive internal bleeding, yet he swears his boss refuses to lose. Her legs finally give out completely. The guard introduces himself as Marcus, the head of security, offering a grim joke that half the crime family payroll shares his name. He praises her for holding pressure on the wound, confirming her quick thinking bought their boss vital minutes. Emma remains fixated on her stained palms, hollow and useless. Marcus notes that she held her ground instead of breaking, a rare trait in their violent circle. She softly confesses that watching her mother fade away in clinical hospital beds gave her the worst kind of practice. The truth we all eventually face is that past trauma never cures our present pain. It merely teaches us how to mask our silent panic from the rest of the room. Marcus nods, admitting that no one ever gets used to the violence. They only become better actors. The agonizing hours drag forward, built on stale coffee and hollow reassurances. Just as the morning sun bleeds through the windows, the heavy silence shatters. Caleb finally arrives on the scene. Caleb appears entirely drained of color when he enters the corridor. Emma collapses into her brother, hiding her face in his shoulder as her composure totally breaks. She weeps so fiercely that her bruised ribs burn with agony, yet the tears refuse to stop. Caleb offers no empty platitudes, simply wrapping his arms around her. It is a vital reminder that when a person's spirit is actively breaking into pieces, silence and a steady presence are worth far more than any spoken words. Catching her breath at last, she explains the sheer scale of the syndicate ambush. Caleb tightens his grip on her trembling fingers, settling in for the brutal weight. Beyond these walls, the Morning City remains entirely blind to an underworld king battling death simply because he refused to abandon the woman he loved. At exactly 9:47, the heavy doors unlatch. The surgeon steps out, his scrubs painted red and his face exhausted. Against all logic, Lucian is stable. The blade missed his heart by a fraction. A crashing wave of relief forces Emma to the floor. Given a strict 5-minute window by the surgeon, she slips into the sterile room, which sits heavy with the sharp smell of antiseptic. To see Lucian stripped of his imposing syndicate armor is a jarring psychological contrast. Tied to a chorus of rhythmic monitors, the most feared man in the city suddenly looks entirely human and fragile. She drags a chair to the bedside, pressing his pale hand against her cheek. She whispers that he is an absolute fool, while quietly thanking him for surviving the slaughter. In response, his fingers offer a faint, miraculous twitch. We see here that a profound emotional tether can sometimes reach through the thickest fog of unconsciousness. The guards leave her in peace, and sheer exhaustion eventually pulls her into a deep sleep, resting against the mattress. Sometime later, she snaps awake with aching muscles. A familiar, warm hand is gently brushing through her tangled hair. You and I have probably both made this mistake in our own lives, judging someone's anger without seeing the fear beneath it. The room is swallowed by the cold, grey light of late afternoon. Yet there is Lucian, eyes open and fixed sharply upon her. He manages a raspy greeting, and Emma feels her throat close up entirely. She tells him directly that he looks like a walking corpse. He offers a weak smirk, admitting he feels even worse, before lifting a hand to trace her jawline. When he asks how long he was gone, she tells him 18 agonizing hours. The medical staff called it a miracle, but Emma is boiling with rage over his reckless choice to fight 4 armed men alone. His expression hardens into stone. He states, without a hint of hesitation, that he would gladly take a bullet before letting an enemy lay a hand on her. We often project our fiercest anger onto the very people we are most terrified of losing. As his thumb brushes away her tears, her fury simply melts away. The air in the room grows incredibly thick. Emma leans in to rest her forehead against his, carefully navigating the maze of plastic medical lines. She softly begs him never to pull a sacrificial stunt like that again. Lucian replies with a quiet vow that he will always fight to stay breathing. Sliding a heavy hand to the back of her neck, he admits a truth that shifts the entire foundation of his world. She means far more to him than any criminal empire. Right as the weight of his words settles, the door violently swings open. Marcus fills the frame, his face carved from granite. The rival syndicate is demanding an immediate parley, and they have named Emma as the central piece on the board. The atmosphere turns to ice. Fighting past his fresh stitches, Lucian forces himself upright. The bitter reality of power is that, no matter how impenetrable your fortress becomes, your greatest and most fatal vulnerability will always be the people you allow yourself to love. A cold wave of nausea crashes over Emma, draining the color from her face. She scrambles to imagine what dark leverage the enemy could possibly hold. Lucian refuses to sit back and guess. He swings his legs off the bed, completely ignoring the frantic warnings of his physician. His voice returns to its commanding growl, ordering a meeting in exactly 2 hours with double the usual muscle. Within 30 minutes, he is dressed in dark clothes and heavily armed, drowning out the protests of the medical team. From the corner, Emma studies how he slightly favors his injured side to mask the blinding pain. She pleads to sneeze, but he simply racks the slide of his pistol with a chilling, practiced calm. He promises to end anyone who speaks her name as a threat. The truest measure of loyalty is standing up to wage war for someone else, even when your own body is shattered and begging you to surrender to the floor. Lucian secures his weapon in its holster, firmly instructing her to remain safely behind locked doors. Emma instantly rejects the command, crossing her arms like a barricade. She is entirely finished, playing the fragile bystander, while he sheds blood to protect her. If the opposition is holding her past as a weapon, she demands a seat at the table to face it. They lock into a silent, fierce battle of wills until Lucian finally exhales a heavy breath of defeat. He offers a rigid compromise. She stays sealed inside the armored transport with his best men, only stepping out if he gives the signal. He demands her promise to flee the moment violence breaks out. Taking his hand, Emma feels the subtle, uncontrollable tremors racing through his veins. Ignoring the fresh agony in his side, he pulls her close, pressing a fierce kiss to her forehead. The truth we must accept is that we cannot shield the people we love from the darkness forever, no matter how thick the walls. Come with me for a moment as we observe how quickly a seemingly controlled environment turns into a trap. The parley is set at a decaying industrial warehouse, a hollow graveyard where loose ends are quietly erased. Emma waits inside an armored transport, flanked by 2 towering enforcers. Through the heavy, tinted glass, she watches Lucian walk toward the rusted entrance. To the outside world, he projects absolute authority, but she alone notices the slight drag of his injured leg. The gaping shadows consume him, and the passing minutes stretch into pure psychological torture. Just as the tension peaks, her phone vibrates in her palm, an untraceable number. The message demands she enter the building alone, or her brother will be executed. At first, she assumes it is a desperate bluff. Then a second message arrives, bringing a sickening drop in her stomach. Life reminds us constantly that the exact moment we assume our loved ones are secure is precisely when the shadow falls over them. A pixelated image loads on her screen, and the foundation of Emma's reality shatters into dust. It is her brother Caleb, bound to his wheelchair, with the cold barrel of a pistol resting casually against his temple. She is instantly consumed by that ringing, deafening terror that blocks out the rest of the world. Yet, when she speaks, her voice is stripped of all emotion. She informs the guards that she is stepping out. When the enforcer attempts to block her path, citing strict orders from the boss, Emma slams the phone screen directly against his chest. She promises to scream loudly enough to drag every patrol car in the district right to their doorstep. The guard wavers, radios for backup, and finally signals his men to flank her. Emma flies toward that rotting building, throwing herself against the heavy metal doors. The most sobering truth of our existence is that sometimes walking directly into a burning house is the only way to pull your family from the ashes. The warehouse stretches out like a tomb, flickering lights casting jagged shadows. Trapped in this grim theater are Lucian and Marcus, encircled by enforcers. Seated there, with a gun pressed to his temple, is Caleb. Lucian screams for Emma to run, his voice fracturing against the walls. A figure in the steps from the gloom, mocking her panic. Emma begs the man to take her instead, but he shakes his head, delivering a chilling revelation. Her previous beating was merely a brutal test to peel back her disguise. He knows she is a cleaner now, but he also recognizes the phantom she was before her mother died. Emma feels her blood freeze. Let's examine this together, because it reveals a profound psychological truth. You can sprint to the ends of the earth, but the shadow of your unhealed past will always match your pace. Emma attempts to maintain her facade, but the suited man only offers a knowing smirk. He takes a slow walk down memory lane, recalling how 15 years ago a wealthy businessman perished in a fire. He pauses, allowing silence to suffocate the room before dropping a devastating bombshell. It was no accident. The floor seems to tilt beneath Emma as he claims she was merely 9 when she struck the fatal match, seeking revenge for her discarded mother. He produces an old newspaper clipping as proof. Emma weakly denies it, but the man points at Caleb, exposing the mismatched birth records and a lifetime of lies. Caleb stares at his sister with raw, shattering betrayal. This tragedy imparts a profound lesson. The absolute heaviest burdens we ever carry are the toxic secrets we hide from the people we love most. Caleb trembles, asking his sister what this lunatic means. Emma cannot even breathe. She tries to explain, but the stranger's voice booms over hers, declaring she burned a man alive. The silence is deafening. Lucian stares at her, his expression hollowed by devastating shock, begging her to say it is a lie. Emma opens her mouth, but the denial dies in her throat. Every word is the harrowing truth. She whispers that she was only 9 and the man was beating her mother. The suited man cuts her off, coldly noting that setting fires in 3 places is premeditated malice. He paints her as a monster, playing the victim, until Lucian finally snaps, roaring for the man to shut his mouth. This stands as a grim reminder. A single moment of blind rage has the power to permanently redefine your entire existence. Lucian attempts to dismiss her history, but the rival unleashes a toxic laugh. He has as a prosecutor ready to reopen the case and evidence exposing Emma as a fugitive. He demands half of Lucian's empire. If Lucian surrenders, Emma's history is erased. If he refuses, Emma goes down for murder. Caleb enters the system, and Lucian's world burns. The weight of this choice is crushing. Emma grips a rusted pole, knuckles white, just to keep from collapsing. 15 years of running, trying to scrub the phantom smell of smoke from her hands, and it is all crashing down. Her voice splinters as she begs Lucian not to surrender his syndicate. We learn a profound truth here. You can construct a beautiful life over a hidden past, but eventually, That fragile foundation will always crack and shatter. You and I can feel the heartbreak here. Let him turn me in, she pleads, her spirit crushed. Lucian ignores the guns aimed at his chest and steps toward her, demanding she look him in the eye. Emma expects to see disgust, but when she raises her head, there is no revulsion. She sees only a man trying to save a girl who believes she is beyond saving. He quietly asks for the real story. Emma nods, choking on tears, and the truth spills out. The man was beating her mother to death, and as a powerless child, she just wanted to scare him. She lit matches in the corners, but the flames spread too fast while he was passed out. She remembers the exact second she realized she had become the monster. This is a tragic lesson. When you try to burn down your own demons, you usually end up catching fire yourself. You were 9 and you survived, Lucian tells her. His voice hardened into steel. He turns his deadly glare back to the rival, declaring her survival is all that matters. Lucian drops the coldest ultimatum. Let the boy go, burn the files, and you walk out breathing. The suit laughs, mocking his crumbling syndicate. Lucian's hand drifts to his holster. No. Lucian replies, "You are here to die." Chaos erupts. Marcus and the guards raise their weapons. The stranger jams his gun harder into Caleb's skull. Lucian's aim does not flinch. He swears that if that trigger is pulled, everyone in this warehouse is going to hell. It is the ultimate standoff, with everyone frozen in terror. In this silence, Emma realizes the hardest truth. Protecting your family means making the brutal sacrifice nobody else is willing to make. Look at the madness unfolding here. Emma sprints straight at Caleb and that loaded weapon, fully prepared to take a bullet. Lucian lets out a raw, gut-wrenching scream. She grabs the wheelchair, ripping it out of the line of fire with a surge of adrenaline. The shooter panics, swinging his weapon wildly, and a single shot shatters the room. At first, she does not feel the agony, registering only a heavy pressure before hitting the concrete. Chaos explodes. Emma stares blankly at the flickering lights, wondering why her side feels like it is freezing over. Lucian drops to his knees, his tough exterior shattered, begging her not to die. Here is the profound reality about genuine sacrifice. It never gives you a warning. It just happens in that quiet, split-second space between heartbeats. The warehouse chaos fades into static. She hears Caleb losing his mind and feels Lucian frantically pressing his hands against her wrecked chest. His voice breaks, crying that she does not get to pull a sacrifice play on him. Then it is lights out. When she regains consciousness, it is a world of blinding agony. Every breath feels like inhaling broken glass. A calm doctor explains the bullet collapsed her lung, and she is wildly lucky to not be in a body bag. Staring at the hospital ceiling, Emma only cares about one thing. She forces out a rough whisper asking for Caleb, and the doctor promises the kid is perfectly safe. Let's take a closer look at what that means. You and I. At the end of the day, a genuine bond of love always finds a way to pull us right back from the absolute edge. The doctor casually mentions she played the hero, and brutal memories flood her brain. The warehouse, that gunshot, sprinting into the jaws of the Grim Reaper. She panics, trying to sit up, asking for Lucian. The doctor pushes her back down, dropping a heavy truth bomb. Lucian is out there right now, systematically deleting anyone who ever saw her file. Emma feels sick, finding out they lost 7 loyal guys just to keep her breathing. An exhausted voice drops from the doorway. Lucian is standing there, looking like he aged a decade in one night. His clothes are still caked in her dried blood, and his eyes look completely haunted. It paints a stark picture. It goes to show the absolute heaviest burdens we carry are always the ones we willingly pick up to protect the people we care about the most. Lucian tells the doctor to leave, and the man vanishes. Lucian drags his exhausted frame to her bed, sitting across a gap that feels like a literal ocean. He drops the hammer, calling her out for lying to his face. Emma is busted. He details how she spent 15 years dodging a murder rap while letting him start a bloody turf war. He asks if she would have even helped him if she knew the truth. She admits she has no idea. Lucian breaks. His face twists with pure rage and devastating heartbreak. He realizes she was just a terrified kid, doing whatever it took to shield her mom from a monster. She cries that her age does not excuse her actions, but he just stares at her. Sometimes we judge people for their darkest secrets before realizing they were just surviving the only way they knew how. Now Lucian is pacing the room like a cornered beast. He is fuming because she built this ghost identity, and now he is scrubbing real blood off his hands to cover for her. Emma is sobbing, whispering that she will just disappear forever. But that sets him off worse. He whips around, heated, telling her he does not care what she did 15 years ago. He is furious because she kept him in the dark while he was literally falling for her. Imagine that plot twist. This hardened leader caught feelings against every survival instinct he has ever known. He burned alliances, started a massive turf war, and dropped bodies for her. And the craziest part? He would do it all again. It reminds us that real loyalty is just finding someone whose mess you are completely willing to clean up. We watch Emma completely crumble, crying out that she is nothing more than a murderer. But Lucian refuses to let her drown in that narrative. He drops to her eye level, fiercely reshaping her trauma. He calls her a survivor who carried an impossible burden without breaking. She begs him to walk away, but he gently wipes her tear, declaring himself firmly anchored to her storm. He reveals the chilling truth. He erased every trace of her past, a pristine slate bought with 3 human lives. Emma is entirely gutted, whispering she is not worth such bloodshed. Let us unpack this together. True devotion in this dark world rarely keeps a clean ledger. The lesson here is heavy but true. The deepest love often demands the most unforgiving sacrifices to protect the people we hold dear. Lucian leans closer, pressing his forehead against hers to anchor her spiraling thoughts. He promises her soul is worth every drop of spilled blood. But then, the romantic facade drops into a harsh reality check. He cannot sustain this war if she continually throws herself into the line of fire. Emma fiercely defends her choices, claiming she was merely shielding Caleb. Lucian sees right through the martyrdom. He calls her reckless sacrifice what it truly is, a beautiful disguise for self-destruction. For 15 years, she has sprinted from her own shadow, terrified of emotional vulnerability. He shatters her defensive walls, pointing out she would rather take a bullet than ask for a steady hand. It forces a mirror on human nature. Often, our most courageous acts are simply elaborate masks for our deepest unspoken fears. The camera lingers on Lucian, his fists tightly clenched. His voice is thick with the specific frustration that only stems from profound care. He begs her to view them as a unified front, rather than relying on solo heroics that only lead to hospital beds. Instinctively, Emma tries to rebuild her familiar fortress of ice, but the foundation is finally crumbling. She is entirely burnt out, whispering how exhausted she is from constantly running. Lucian drops to his knees, anchoring her with an unwavering gaze. He tells her the evasion ends now. She must stop carrying the crushing weight of the world in total isolation. In the end, the underlying truth is clear. Sometimes the absolute bravest choice a person can make is simply stepping back and allowing themselves to be held. He desperately needs her to understand that lowering her shield is not a sign of defeat. Trusting someone requires far more spine than simply destroying an enemy. Emma stares at this hardened boss through completely blurred vision. He literally went to war for her, offering a brand of loyalty she never believed she deserved. Finally, she confesses her darkest terror. She fears he will eventually see her as nothing more than a frightened child who made colossal mistakes. In response, Lucian pulls her against his chest, vowing he will never walk away. The dam completely breaks, and Emma is torn apart by agonizing sobs. We all eventually reach that critical boiling point in life. Sometimes we have to completely shatter before we can finally start putting our broken pieces back together. When the tears finally subside, she looks up and asks for their next strategic move, but Lucian pivots, brushing the tangled hair from her face with surprising gentleness. He declares that their only mission now is healing. He promises us that she and Caleb are completely off the Syndicate's radar. They will face the inevitable fallout once she regains her strength. Emma simply nods, burying her face against him, desperately wanting to trust this fragile ceasefire. Outside the window, the cold morning sun slowly creeps over the city skyline, washing over two broken souls clinging to one another like life rafts. Her heart finally settles into a completely new rhythm. It reminds us of a fundamental truth. Even in our absolute darkest chapters, we still deeply deserve to feel the warmth of the morning sun. Emma melts into the steady rhythm of his breathing, thanking him for not abandoning her. His arms tighten around her, acting as an unshakable anchor in her chaotic storm. He murmurs that she is officially stuck with him. Now, for the first time in her transient life, the idea of being trapped does not trigger her instinct to bolt. Surrendering control suddenly feels exactly like true freedom. As the steady pulse of the monitor lulls her to sleep, he drops a quiet bombshell, confessing his love despite her violent history. Exhaustion pulls her under before she can return the words. It is a vital reminder that real love never judges the ghosts of our past. Yet, fate rarely allows peace to linger. Without warning, the brutal crash of shattering glass completely obliterates their quiet morning. Stick with me here, because this is the exact moment the illusion of safety is completely obliterated. Emma's eyes snap open as white-hot agony tears through her damaged lungs. The room is swallowed in pitch black, save for the eerie moonlight bleeding over the shattered glass on the floor. The clock glows a menacing 3:47 in the morning. Deep within the compound, a blood-curdling scream rips through the silence. She forces her broken body upright just as the door violently kicks open. Marcus bursts inside, gripping a heavy pistol, and declares a code red. Kravik's armed hit squad has breached the walls, and 20 men are hunting her down. This terrifying sequence teaches a cold reality. When genuine danger comes knocking in the dead of night, you instantly discover what your survival instincts are truly made of. Marcus essentially drags Emma down the dark hallway. Every single step sends pure agony through her shattered ribs, but primal survival takes the wheel. The heavy thud of combat boots echoes up the stairs right on their heels. They whip around a blind corner and nearly collide with the two armed mercenaries. Without hesitation, Marcus raises his weapon and drops them both with two deafening shots. He violently shoves Emma forward, screaming at her to run. He shouts out the safe room code, ordering her to lock the doors and wait. Then, this loyal soldier turns back, stepping directly into the jaws of certain death just to buy her a few precious seconds. The life lesson is written in his sacrifice. True loyalty is never verified in times of comfort. It is proven the exact second someone willingly steps between you and a roaring fire. Emma collapses through the heavy door, her hands trembling so violently she can barely punch in the sequence. The massive steel locks engage with a deafening slam. Inside this freezing bunker, bathed in the glow of security feeds, Caleb and Clara sit paralyzed. Caleb's voice cracks as he begs to know what is happening. Leaning against the wall, Emma promises that this room is built to withstand anything. Right on cue, a massive explosion rocks the estate. On the monitors, the east wing vanishes into a roaring wall of fire. Clara covers her mouth in horror. Emma frantically scans the grid until she spots Lucian on the third floor. He is entirely cornered, trading brutal gunfire. It highlights a painful truth we all eventually face. Watching the people we love fight our battles from a distance is the most helpless burden a person can possibly carry. Emma stands entirely frozen, her eyes locked on the glowing screens. Every shot Lucian takes is calculated, but the sheer math is against him. Caleb violently wheels his chair forward, screaming that they cannot just hide while their people are slaughtered. Emma grips the desk, arguing that stepping outside is a literal death sentence. She can barely stand, and he is in a wheelchair. Caleb shoots her a look of absolute betrayal, accusing her of simply watching their protectors die. The accusation slices deep because it is undeniably true. On the monitor, Lucian is forced back toward the grand staircase, his shirt soaked in dark blood. He is rapidly running out of real estate. The bitter lesson of this narrative is stark. Sometimes, surviving means you must sit in agonizing silence while other people pay the ultimate bloody price for your safety. The oxygen in that bunker feels impossibly thin. The cinematic tension perfectly frames the moment terror wraps its hands around her throat. Emma focuses on one brutal equation. If she stays hidden in this box, Lucian is a dead man. Her eyes drift toward the heavy weapons cabinet. Clara desperately tries to talk her down, but Emma's mind is made up. She grabs a steel chair and violently smashes the lock, revealing enough firepower to supply a small army. Caleb begs her to stop, terrified she is walking into a slaughter. Unfazed, she grabs a handgun, checks the magazine, and completely refuses to cower in the shadows. It teaches us a profound reality. The most heroic thing we can ever do is refuse to let our loved ones fight alone. Caleb registers that fire in her eyes, and in that split second, he decides he is rolling out with her. Caleb pushes his wheelchair forward, his jaw locked in pure defiance. Emma tries to block his path, but he is officially done following her orders. His next words hit her like a runaway freight train, completely shattering the narrative. He confesses that he knows absolutely everything. He knows about the fire, the life she took at 9 years old, and the decades she spent running. Tears stream down his young face. He is not angry about her violent past. He is furious she carried that agonizing psychological weight in total isolation. She always claimed she was protecting him, but Caleb finally dismantles that lie. She was just terrified to admit how deeply broken she was. The lesson here is devastating. Hiding our deepest wounds from the people we love never keeps them safe. It merely leaves everyone drowning in isolation. Emma slowly slides down the steel cabinet, stripped bare. He is absolutely right. Emma accepts the grim truth, but the danger remains suffocating. Caleb cannot walk. Wheeling into a crossfire is a literal death sentence, yet he reaches for a gun, declaring that family always watches out for each other. Emma used to face the wolves alone, but today, she stops pretending she doesn't need help. She readies his weapon and orders him to stay behind her. Clara pleads from the corner, terrified they are rolling straight into their graves. Emma just checks her magazine. The lesson here is simple. Accepting help doesn't make you weak. It gives you the absolute strength to step right into the fire. She pushes the heavy oak door open. The hallway is completely choked with thick smoke and echoing gunfire. She looks back at Caleb, telling him to stay close. They slip into the corridor, Caleb wheeling through the shadows. They move like ghosts through the smoke, dodging hitmen. Emma pulls Caleb back from checking a fallen guard's pulse. The mansion is now a complete war zone. Bullets chew the walls and fire consumes the wings. Suddenly, the surgical wound on Emma's side violently tears open. Hot blood soaks her shirt, but she refuses to stop. You and I both know that sometimes intense pain is just a brutal reminder that you are alive enough to keep fighting. They creep to the grand staircase and peek over. Down in the foyer, Lucian and 3 guards are trapped in a desperate defensive circle. They are surrounded, running dry on ammo, firing with the agonizing hesitation of men who know the end is here. Caleb whispers they need a distraction. Emma's eyes lock onto the massive chandelier above the foyer. The chain looks damaged. She asks if he can make the shot. Caleb steadies his arm against his wheelchair, breathes out, and fires. He misses by inches. Instantly, every hostile snaps their aim toward the balcony. Emma violently yanks his chair backward as the air fills with flying lead. Bullets chew the marble, missing her by a whisper. The reality of survival is simple. When a wild plan falls apart, you never freeze. You move. She drags Caleb behind a thick column as the space disintegrates. Slicing through the roaring gunfire, she hears Lucian. The madman has broken his defensive circle. Covered in blood, he is fighting his way up the crumbling stairs, coming right for her. Lucian moves sluggishly, weighed down by exhaustion, but his eyes lock onto Emma with insane intensity, knowing he would die trying to reach the top alone. Emma steps from the column, raises her weapon, and opens fire. The brutal recoil nearly knocks her flat. Her lungs scream, but she pulls the trigger until the chamber clicks empty. It buys him just enough time. Lucian's cloak X's the Gapsy violently, shoving her behind the pillar and using his body as a shield. He demands to know what she is doing, his voice cracking with absolute terror. True devotion is stepping into the line of fire for someone else, even when it defies logic. Emma touches his bruised face. She sarcastically remarks that since he was supposed to stay safely alive, they are both deeply disappointing each other today. A broken laugh rips from Lucian's throat. He pulls her in for a desperate kiss, tasting of blood, bitter ash, and the terrifying reality they might die any second. He confesses his love, followed by how furiously angry he is that she risked her life. Emma just smiles, fumbling to reload. Lucian peeks around the column, deciding they will make a mad dash for the garage. He is leaving the mansion to burn. Emma is stunned. This place was the foundation of his entire empire. But Lucian doesn't hesitate. He swears he would let his whole world turn to ash if it meant keeping her breathing. We often learn what truly matters only when everything else is violently stripped away. Grabbing Caleb's wheelchair, they bolt out from their cover into the chaotic crossfire. Lucian pushes Caleb's chair with one arm, firing with the other. Emma sprints alongside, blindly shooting to hold the hitmen back. They tear past the rooms where Emma once mopped floors as an invisible ghost in his empire. The steel garage door looms ahead. Suddenly, Marcus materializes from the smoke. Bleeding from a severe head wound, He plants his feet and unleashes a wall of suppressing fire. Lucian punches the code, shoving Caleb and Emma inside. He screams for Marcus to follow, but as Marcus turns, a bullet catches him right in the spine. He collapses, completely still. Emma screams, fighting to run back into the crossfire, but Lucian grabs her. He violently drags her inside and slams the heavy door shut. The deadbolt engages with the cold finality of a tomb. The chaos of this moment is overwhelming. Emma is devastated, screaming at Lucian not to leave Marcus behind. But Lucian remains stoic. He knows going back means adding their own bodies to the pile. You and I can probably agree that the hardest part of surviving a war is choosing who gets left in the dirt. While Emma shakes from the trauma, Lucian secures Caleb into the armored truck. As they pull out, she looks in the mirror and watches his empire go up in flames. She is crying, but he just grips the wheel tight. Here is a very real-life lesson. Sometimes you have to let your entire castle burn to the ground just to keep your family breathing. Money does not matter when you are dead. He floors the gas pedal, and the entire mansion violently detonates behind them. The engine roars as Emma watches the mansion turn into a smoking ashtray. In the back, Caleb is panicked, demanding to know where they are going. Lucian rips the wheel around a sharp corner and delivers a chilling promise. They are heading to a Brooklyn safe house because if their enemies won a war, they are getting a bloodbath. But here is the heartbreaking twist in this tragedy. The figure who ordered this hit on Lucian is the exact same syndicate boss who took him in off the streets and raised him. He taught him everything. The ultimate life lesson here is brutal. The most fatal backstabs never come from strangers. The worst snake bites always come from the exact people who taught you how to survive. Now, the student is gearing up for pure, calculated revenge. The Manhattan streets fly by, and the atmosphere inside the truck is suffocating. Emma is completely traumatized. The mansion is gone, Marcus is dead, and her world is fractured. But Lucian has flipped a dark, psychological switch. He plainly tells her you do not walk away from a mob hit of this magnitude. You either strike back with overwhelming force, or you end up buried 6 feet under. Emma looks at his cold expression and realizes the gentle man she thought she knew is gone. In his place sits a ruthless boss, ready to drown the city streets in blood. It reveals a harsh life lesson. People will show you exactly who they are when their back is against the wall, and you better believe them the first time. The true cycle of violence is starting all over again. Emma whispers that she wants no part in this upcoming slaughter. Lucian looks at her with ice in his veins and delivers an unyielding ultimatum. They are about to plot the total wipeout of everyone who crossed them. If she cannot handle the reality of mob justice, she needs to walk away right now. He promises to keep her safe, but refuses to apologize for becoming a savage. He tells her to wake up and stop pretending he is a hero because he runs a criminal empire. The life lesson here is heavy. Sometimes surviving the darkest nights means tossing your morals out the window and teaming up with the monster in the room. But despite being terrified of the man he is becoming, Emma leans into his touch. She knows he is extremely dangerous, but she is choosing to stay anyway. They park in a dimly lit garage, and the tension is unbearable. Emma briefly contemplates grabbing Caleb and vanishing to seek a normal life. But let us be real here, a normal life is a myth. Her innocence expired the day she saw her first murder at 9 years old. Lucian, even with his terrifyingly dark energy, is the only person who looked directly at her trauma and chose to stay. You and I both know the real life lesson. Stop chasing a fake, perfect existence and value the people who hold you down when things get ugly. She grabs his cold hand, confirming she is not running away, but she begs the boss for one favor. When the smoke finally clears and the enemies are gone, she wants him to try building a life that does not revolve around digging graves. Lucian clenches his jaw before dropping a single nod. He will try. It is bare minimum energy, but Emma knows it is the best deal she is getting today. They hop out of the truck, rolling Caleb down the damp hallways to room 304. Inside this freezing safe house, 3 surviving syndicate members are waiting. Their eyes are screaming for violent payback. The veteran enforcer drops the battle stats. They lost 8 members, but managed to drop 16 enemy hitmen before the mansion burned. The physical base is wrecked, but here is a major life lesson. Always keep a hidden backup plan. The boss had all the syndicate money and tech completely secured off the grid. Their financial war chest is fully loaded, and they are stepping out to buy a whole lot of revenge. Lucian steps before the glowing monitors, orchestrating a coordinated massacre with the cold precision of a boardroom executive. He initiates a simultaneous strike across every rival warehouse and stash house. Emma watches in absolute horror, pleading for the innocent workers who will inevitably be caught in the crossfire. But Lucian remains perfectly still. In his brutal ecosystem of toxic masculinity and mafia survival, collateral damage is simply the cost of doing business. Caleb grips the wheels of his chair, completely paralyzed by the sheer scale of the violence. They have crossed the threshold into total darkness. It forces us to confront a harsh reality in the blind pursuit of vengeance. The ones who suffer most are often the ones who had nothing to do with the fight at all. Emma turns to flee, but Lucian catches her wrist. He studies her fracturing composure, then silently releases his grip, pressing a burner phone into her palm. She scrambles up to the rooftop, her legs finally giving out as the freezing air hits her face. She stares at the bleeding skyline, haunted by the ashes of her home and the ghost of Marcus. A war is burning the city just because she exists. Then the heavy metal door creaks open, and Caleb rolls his wheelchair into the biting cold to sit quietly beside her. You and I both know this feeling well, when the ground falls out from under you. Finding one familiar face changes everything. It is a profound truth of the human experience that our darkest moments act as a filter, revealing exactly who is willing to sit with us in the ruins. Emma completely breaks down, her voice shattering as she apologizes for the deception and the labyrinth of mafia violence she dragged him into. But Caleb remains an immovable anchor. He reaches out, taking her trembling hand, and reminds her they have been a team since the very beginning. Looking out over the vast city, he delivers a grounded truth. He would rather dodge bullets by her side than live a perfectly safe, utterly hollow life alone. He heard the same chilling briefing. He understands the brutal arithmetic of the underworld, and he is not walking away. It teaches us a vital lesson about loyalty. True connection is not about abandoning the people we love when the storm hits. It is about holding on to them even tighter when the rain turns to glass. Caleb looks Emma directly in the eyes and strips away all the illusions. The rival assassins are never going to stop hunting them unless those threats are permanently erased. He refuses to judge Lucian for wielding violence like a shield to keep their family breathing. But Emma is completely hollowed out, bleeding and exhausted by this endless cycle of retribution. She confesses she cannot simply accept this reality. Caleb squeezes her hand, offering a raw perspective. He tells her she does not need to accept it, she just needs to survive it. Weather the hurricane today, and maybe she can pull Lucian back from the brink of his own darkness tomorrow. We must remember that, when faced with impossible odds, survival alone is a victory, and healing can only begin after the bleeding stops. The morning light fractures across the skyline as Emma finally finds her resolve. She takes a stabilizing breath and pushes Caleb down into the Mafia war room. Lucian looks up from the glowing hit list and, with a voice empty of hesitation, Emma declares her absolute allegiance. She will cross any line to eradicate this enemy faction and protect her family. Lucian pulls her close, kissing her temple. But his warning hangs heavy in the air. The violence is about to reach unimaginable depths. She already knows. Standing beside the syndicate boss, Emma feels the final fragment of her innocence dissolve into the shadows. Life constantly demands impossible compromises, teaching us that protecting the people we cherish often costs pieces of ourselves we can never recover. Let us examine the visual poetry of this moment. The Manhattan sunrise paints the safe house walls a deep, unforgiving red. The terrified woman who spent 15 years running from her shadows has transformed into a queen commanding the chessboard. Over 3 relentless days, Lucian turns the criminal ecosystem into a methodical slaughter. Emma stands vigil at the monitors as the enemy syndicate is dismantled piece by piece. Day 1 sees warehouses reduced to ash. Day 2 freezes their offshore accounts and eliminates their foot soldiers. By day 3, the rival empire is a graveyard, and Lucian's inner circle remains completely untouched. The profound takeaway here is that sometimes, to stop running from the demons of your past, you have to stand absolutely still and strike the match yourself. It is 4 in the morning, and the final remnants crew of the rival apartment are rode in a bronco. You and I recognize that suffocating silence right before a storm breaks. Emma watches intently as Lucian secures his tactical vest, his eyes locked in a chilling, predatory focus. She whispers a desperate plea, begging him to let his foot soldiers handle the execution. But Lucian ignores her, securing his weapon. In his toxic ideology, a true leader must eliminate threats with his own hands. She reminds him of his promise to find a quiet exit, yet for him, the only exit is total annihilation. It is a haunting psychological truth. The towering fortress walls we construct to keep our loved ones completely safe are often the very same walls that imprison them in the darkness right beside us. Emma is visibly trembling, her voice fracturing as she insists, this endless slaughter is not what she wanted. Lucian gently traces the line of her cheekbone with a calloused thumb. In his deeply broken psychology, absolute annihilation is the only valid love language he has left. Emma is suffocating under the weight of her dread, terrified that the cycle of violence will eventually consume him. He rests his forehead against hers, promising he will never leave her side. But Emma understands the grim reality of the underworld. Every action creates a more brutal reaction. She can already see the dirt falling on his casket. A vital lesson we must all learn is knowing exactly when to stop fighting, because waging an eternal war will eventually destroy the exact sanctuary you fought to defend. Lucian grips her shoulders tight, paralyzed by the sheer terror that the next retaliation will steal her away. He refuses to leave anything to chance. But Emma pushes back with fierce desperation, demanding to know where the bloodshed actually ends. When you bury one ghost, another inevitably rises from the soil. She warns him that his soul is rotting, and soon he will be nothing more than a hollow monument to his own body count. He insists the violence will cease the moment she is perfectly secure, but safety in the Mafia is a complete illusion. She begs him to choose their shared future over his endless vendetta. True strength is rarely found in the capacity to burn a city to the ground. Sometimes, the most immense power a person can wield is having the courage to put down the gun. Emma pleads through quiet tears, challenging him to prove he possesses the immense strength required to simply stop. A devastating war wages behind Lucian's dark eyes. His primal urge for retribution crashes violently against his desperate desire to give her a peaceful life. Turning his back, his voice goes hollow as he confesses he cannot be a man of mercy. He is a creature built entirely for destruction. When she asks who he has become, he coldly replies that he is the monsters, willing to burn his own humanity to ash just to keep her pulse beating. Emma is utterly shattered. His tragic justification reveals a heartbreaking reality about attachment. The deepest tragedy of love is that, in the desperate attempt to save the person you cherish, you can entirely lose your own soul in the process. Lucian drifts numbly toward the heavy door, murmuring that her survival is the only metric that matters. Emma unleashes a raw, guttural scream that stops him dead in his tracks. She demands he understand that simply breathing is not the same thing as actually living. Surviving in the paranoid shadows is a prison sentence, and she refuses to watch him butcher his own spirit. Lucian spins around, his face a mask of pure agony, asking if she truly expects him to gamble her life on the non-existent mercy of their enemies. Emma closes the distance, wrapping her hands around his trembling fists. She reminds him that a crime lord and a civilian falling in love was considered an impossible fantasy, yet here they are. Real transformation happens the exact moment we stop running and choose hope over fear. Lucian warns her she's no idea what kind of vulnerability she is asking for, yet Emma holds her ground, demanding he choose the living woman right in front of him before he crosses the point of no return. A suffocating silence fills the room. You and I can clearly see the psychological dam breaking behind Lucian's eyes. Suddenly, the ruthless boss shatters. He violently tears off his tactical vest, hurling it across the room with a bitter curse. He collapses into a chair, burying his face in his hands, weeping as he admits he has only ever known how to build empires through terror. Emma kneels gently beside him. It reveals a profound truth. Sometimes the absolute bravest action a person can take is allowing themselves to shatter in order to protect a fragile, newfound love. Listen closely to the profound shift in this scene. Emma leans in, her voice a quiet anchor, telling him the war is won. Now comes the truly terrifying part. He must prove he has struck his weapon. Lucian goes dead silent. Then his fortress crumbles. He pulls her into his lap, burying his face in her neck as a raw, hollow sob tears through his chest. This architect of violence is finally breaking open. When he finds his voice, he surrenders the final raid to his soldiers, warning her that his mercy might invite ruin. She simply kisses his forehead. They are doing this differently now. True partnership means sharing the crushing weight of the world together, because stepping into the unknown is far less frightening when you do not have to walk alone. This massive surrender of control might actually be the thing that saves them. The final assault unfolds without Lucian in the room. Emma watches the silent security feeds, feeling his hand crush hers as his enforcers execute the raid. 17 wild minutes later, 8 enemies lie dead, and the rest surrendered. The war is officially over. Lucian makes 2 quiet phone calls, one to banish the survivors, and another to a detective, trading dead men's secrets to erase his own violent past. Then he powers off his phone, pulls Emma against his chest, and freezes. An hour passes in complete silence before Caleb finds them huddled together. Stepping away from your darkest demons is never a clean break. It is a slow, exhausting exhale after holding your breath for your entire life. Caleb finally speaks, confirming the coast is clear. The massive mansion is a total write-off, its walls gutted by the conflict. The physical structure can be rebuilt, but their old life has turned entirely to ash. Emma feels Lucian tense up, silently grieving the bloody monuments of his history. She whispers that they will build something legitimate now, resting on a foundation that is not soaked in violence. Caleb rolls his wheelchair forward, asking the heavy question of what comes next. Lucian sits up, running a tired hand through his hair. He has a clean penthouse in the city, entirely disconnected from the underworld. He is liquidating the darkness. Moving forward often means letting our old, toxic monuments burn to the ground, just so we can finally see the clear sky above. Lucian admits that dismantling his massive criminal syndicate will take time, but he is fully committed. Emma stares at him in absolute awe. This hardened boss is willingly stepping down from his blood-stained throne, so they never have to look over their shoulders again. When she warns that going clean will spawn vicious new enemies, Lucian just flashes a razor-sharp smile. He is not going soft, he is merely choosing a different battlefield. But peace is always fragile. You and I know that the past is never truly done with us. The tension spikes when Caleb clears his throat, looking dead at his sister. Emma feels her stomach drop. Her brother wants the ugly truth about the lies she fed him, starting with the tragic fire. The dreaded moment of absolute reckoning has finally arrived. Emma finally rips off the bandage, stripping away a decade of protective lies. She tells Caleb about the relentless beatings they endured, admitting that at 9 years old, blinded by panic, she lit the match that started the fire. She spills the painful history of running, adopting fake names, drowning in debt, and scrubbing floors in a mobster's home just to survive. By the time she finishes, Caleb is quietly crying. Emma's voice shatters as she begs for forgiveness, but Caleb wipes his eyes and tells her to stop apologizing. She was just a child, carrying an unimaginable weight in the dark for 15 years to protect him. We often forget how much brutal strength survival demands. True forgiveness simply asks us to honor the heavy burdens our loved ones carried to keep us safe. Caleb reaches out and holds her shaking hands. He is not angry about the fire, just heartbroken she felt forced to carry that secret in silence. When Emma swears she only wanted to shield him, Caleb reminds her he is 19 now. He survived losing his legs, dodging mob attacks, and watching their home burn. He does not look at her and see a monster. He sees a fiercely loyal sister who sacrificed her entire youth for his sake. Pulling her into a hug, Caleb asks her to finally let him and Lucian share the heavy weight of the world. Over in the shadows, Lucian stands a silent watch, giving them the space to heal. Love is not just about shielding your family from the storm. The bravest act of love is putting down your armor and letting someone else hold the umbrella. Let us pause right here, because the visual framing of this moment is pure cinema. Emma stands wiping away tears, caught between her resilient brother and the most dangerous man in the city, both looking at her like she is the absolute center of their universe. She openly admits her fear of trusting anyone. But Lucian steps forward and swears they will figure it out together. Cut to that afternoon, where they move into a stunning Trica penthouse, overlooking the Hudson River. Emma is entirely overwhelmed that a crime boss flipped his entire destiny just to give her a safe harbor. But here is the profound truth of the human experience. Sometimes, the people who have been absolutely shattered by the world are the exact ones who know how to put your broken pieces back together. Lucian hands her a glass of aged whiskey as she stares down at the dizzying city drop. Emma openly confesses her anxiety, admitting she is just waiting for this fragile dream to explode in her face. But Lucian places a heavy, grounding hand on her back, promising her this peace is completely real. She questions how two deeply broken people are supposed to fake a normal life. He just hits her with a quiet, knowing smile. They are not faking anything. They are building their own normal. His empire is going completely legal. Caleb is heading to college, and the paranoia is finally over. Emma feels a spark of something she buried 15 years ago. Hope, you and I both know how rare that feeling is. You do not need a spotless past to build a beautiful future. You just need the courage to stay. Imagine standing on the edge of an unknown future, knowing the fall could completely wreck you. Emma whispers that he makes redemption sound entirely too easy. Lucian sets his drink down, telling her straight up that it will be a messy process. He frames her face in his scarred hands, confessing he wants to see what they can build when they stop merely surviving. She admits she is terrified, and he delivers a profound response. Then let us be terrified together. Their kiss is no longer a desperate fight for control. It is soft, grounded in the belief that they finally have time. Here is the true emotional core of their story. The absolute bravest thing a survivor can do is drop their defensive guard and actively choose to love the person standing right in front of them. Emma jokes that they are perfect for each other in the most dysfunctional way possible. They hold each other as the Manhattan sun dips below the skyline. Down on the streets, the cities is a brutal meat grinder, but up here, two battle-weary souls have finally found peace. Will it be smooth forever? No, you cannot just erase a dark history overnight. Fast forward 3 months, and the cinematic tone completely shifts to the domestic. Emma is literally fighting a coffee maker, desperately praying she does not burn breakfast again. A quiet life is not her strong suit, but she is learning how to truly live. Caleb is crushing his university classes and pushing hard through physical therapy. It proves that taking small steps every single day builds the absolute greatest victories. Caleb is finally looking toward his future with bright, unclouded eyes. Meanwhile, Lucian is doing the grueling work of ripping his criminal empire apart at the roots, fighting daily to buy out ruthless syndicates and go completely legitimate. Deep psychological trauma does not just vanish, though. The nightmares still hunt them. Emma wakes up terrified of phantom flames, while Lucian jolts awake, reaching for a weapon that is no longer there. But instead of suffering in isolation, they anchor each other. One morning, Lucian strolls into the kitchen. He gently takes the spatula from Emma, smoothly pointing out she is incinerating the eggs. When she argues she wanted to surprise him, he jokes the real surprise is the silent smoke alarms. Real healing is simply finding shared laughter in the middle of a messy life. Lucian quietly tells her to sit down and let him handle the food. Emma leans against the marble island, just watching him work. Think about the absolute psychological plot twist here. The former boogeyman of the criminal underworld is standing in a sunlit kitchen, scrambling eggs. He catches her staring. She laughs, noting how wonderfully weird their existence has become. He raises a dark eyebrow, asking if it is a good weird or a bad weird. She smiles warmly, confirming it is definitely good. She thinks about the nights she spent scrubbing dirty floors, marveling at the distance they have crossed. Then, Lucian completely shifts the gravity of the room. He looks dead at her and says he has been thinking about their future. He wants to marry her. Emma freezes. Sometimes life flips fast, and you just have to hold on for the ride. When Lucian presents the ultimate question of marriage, Emma fractures under the weight of it. She stammers out the logic of their brief 3-month history. But we see a man entirely anchored in his conviction, his devotion forged in that bloody warehouse, when she stood as a shield for her brother. Recognizing her paralyzing fear of accepting anything good, he reaches across the cold marble. His grip is an iron tether to reality. He dismantled a sprawling criminal syndicate for her, and he refuses to retreat now. As tears spill over her quiet doubts, he makes a vow to battle the darkness alongside her. Genuine love is never a promise of perfect safety. It is the conscious choice to stand shoulder to shoulder when the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against you. You and I know how paralyzing it can be to lower your defenses after a lifetime of war. Lucian understands this psychology perfectly. Rather than demanding an immediate answer, he asks her to consider if they have earned a genuine sanctuary. Emma buries her face against his chest, terrified of ruining the fragile light they found. He gently strokes her hair, grounding her in her own resilience. When she finally agrees to think about it, the relief that washes over the former crime lord is profound. They linger in the morning sun, letting their breakfast go cold while Caleb quietly eavesdrops from the hall. But then a sudden vibration from her phone shatters the quiet intimacy. It is a sharp reminder of a vital truth. Peace is not a permanent destination, but a delicate state that requires constant, deliberate work. Emma pulls the device out, and her posture instantly hardens. Lucian snaps into a defensive stance, his mafia instincts flaring to life, but the screen reveals an email, not an executioner. New York University is offering a full scholarship for social work. Lucian grips her shoulders with pride, while Emma spirals into confusion since she never applied. He quietly admits to pulling heavy strings to open the door, insisting the academic labor will be entirely hers. The prospect of a normal life terrifies her far more than violence ever did, but Lucian looks her dead in the eye and states her era of mere survival is over. Now, she gets to discover who she actually is. Surviving a brutal storm is an act of sheer endurance, but building a solid home in the aftermath requires a completely different kind of courage. The psychological weight of her past keeps Emma frozen in place. She fears that pursuing a meaningful future might sever the deep connection she shares with this former kingpin, but Lucian removes that doubt instantly, promising to support her ascent no matter the personal cost. True devotion does not demand that two people shrink to fit into the same dark box. It provides the necessary oxygen for individual dreams to flourish. Overcome by this profound safety, Emma pulls him into a desperate, grounding kiss. As they part, she quietly asks him to repeat his earlier question. When the proposal hangs in the air again, she delivers a resolute, fearless yes. He sweeps her off her feet, spinning her through the sunlit kitchen in a rare display of boyish joy. Right on cue, Caleb rolls into the room with a knowing smile, having waited for this exact moment. Caleb breaks the emotional tension with sharp humor, revealing that Lucian had formally asked for his blessing days ago. Looking at these two vastly different men, Emma realizes the family she forged in blood and terror is about to be legally bound. Caleb offers a profound piece of wisdom, noting that they were already a family. The legal document simply constructs a fortress around them. For the first time, Emma peers into the future and sees a promise rather than a looming threat. 6 months later, the scene shifts to a stark, quiet Manhattan courthouse. Emma wears an understated white dress, holding a loose bouquet of wildflowers. There are no syndicate bosses lurking in the shadows, only two fractured souls constructing a foundation. Blood does not define your kin. True family is found in the people who choose to stand beside you in the fire. We witness a deeply symbolic moment as they stand before a judge who seems to peer straight through their hardened exteriors. The officiant speaks to the gravity of marriage, noting how human nature begs us to flee when pain surfaces. The ultimate lesson is that genuine love is the defiant act of holding your ground. Emma grips Lucian's hand, feeling the raised tissue of his violent history under her thumb. In his eyes, she sees the lingering ghosts of his syndicate days, beautifully eclipsed by the fierce devotion that altered his fate. Her spoken vows are steady, anchored in absolute certainty, and Lucian's voice matches her resolve. As they are pronounced husband and wife, his kiss effectively banishes the outside world. Wrapped in the arms of a reformed kingpin, Emma experiences the intoxicating warmth of a future she once believed was out of her reach. As the ceremony concludes, Caleb lets out a celebratory whistle while Clara silently wipes away her tears. In that specific microsecond, something fractured deep within Emma's psyche finally aligns into place. True peace is rarely just the absence of conflict or the silencing of guns. It is the rock-solid assurance that when the next inevitable storm breaks, you will not have to endure the freezing rain by yourself. They share an intimate dinner completely devoid of mafia paranoia or hidden threats. Seeing her brother laugh without a shadow of fear makes Emma's chest physically ache with gratitude. Later that evening at the penthouse, Lucian lifts her effortlessly, carrying her over the threshold. His gentle reverence stands in stark contrast to his brutal past, allowing her nervous system to completely shut down its alarms. She is finally truly safe. The narrative shifts as the former syndicate boss rests beside his new wife, asking where her mind is wandering. Emma confesses a creeping anxiety that this tranquil life is merely an illusion waiting to shatter, but Lucian refuses to offer her hollow positivity. He plainly acknowledges that chaos will inevitably find them again, but promises they will face the destruction as a united front. They are two deeply flawed individuals choosing to merge their broken pieces. She pulls him into a kiss, a silent thank you for seeing beneath her the defensive armor and giving her a reason to stop running. In return, he finds salvation in no longer having to play the role of an absolute monster. Genuine love is never about ignoring the wreckage of someone's past. It is about picking up a shovel and helping them clear the debris day after relentless day. 1 year later, the script delivers a stunning visual contrast. Emma walks across a brightly lit university graduation stage. The same young woman who was forced into fatal violence at just 9 years old is now accepting a college diploma. Down in the audience, Lucian and Caleb abandon their stoic personas, cheering with reckless abandon. Tears stream down her face, and the emotional release is entirely justified. She survived the suffocating gravity of the criminal underworld and emerged into the light. Later, over impossibly expensive champagne, Caleb raises a glass to her relentless grit, honoring how she refused to fold when the darkness felt absolute. This moment highlights a profound psychological truth. The most powerful display of strength is not found in destroying your enemies, but in the meticulous, quiet act of rebuilding yourself from the ashes. Let us look closer at this dynamic. Emma redirects the praise back to Caleb, acknowledging his grueling battle through intensive physical therapy. But Caleb softly rejects the credit, pointing out that she was the one who taught them both how to walk through the dark corridors of survival. As she rests her hand on the table, the heavy glimmer of her wedding band serves as a symbol of permanence. Later, they stand on an elegant balcony, watching the sprawling city lights below. You and I know that behind those glowing windows, countless people are fighting their own invisible wars. Recovering from profound trauma is an agonizing, unglamorous grind that tests every fiber of your being. But the ultimate takeaway remains clear. Reaching the summit of that mountain makes every single brutal scar you earned along the way entirely worth it. Bathed in the neon glow of the city skyline, Lucian asks a heavily loaded question. He wants to know if she harbors any regrets about the absolute hellscape they had to walk through to get here. Emma does not even blink. She firmly tells him no, because they did not merely survive the Mafia's twisted game, they fundamentally broke the board and won. Lucian, the man who willingly burned his own empire to ash to keep her safe, completely agrees. He realizes that this quiet intimacy is vastly superior to the intoxicating rush of underworld power. They have cultivated something genuine. The thematic lesson here carries immense weight. Ultimate victory does not always demand the annihilation of your rivals. Sometimes, winning is simply finding a partner who helps carry your heaviest burdens instead of adding stones to your pack. Let us abandon the illusion of neat cinematic fairy tales. No magical intervention could ever erase the dense psychological trauma these characters endured. For over a year, Emma existed as a trapped ghost pacing the halls of Lucian's estate, barely surviving a clandestine syndicate war that threatened to consume them all. But look at her evolution now. Her brother is completely secure, their adversaries have been reduced to memory, and she is finally allowed to exhale. She has successfully deactivated her chronic survival mode. If there is one enduring truth to extract from this narrative, it is this. Genuine happiness is never a random lottery ticket you stumble upon. It is a formidable fortress that you must construct with your own bare, bleeding hands and then fiercely defend for the rest of your life. We find her leaning against a bandaged Lucian, watching the sun spill over a city that tried to devour her. Naturally, tomorrow will likely spawn a fresh wave of violence, because that is the corrosive reality of the underworld. But right now, in the stillness of dawn, there is only peace. Let us step back and look at the bigger picture together. The ultimate lesson of this story is that a true home is never just a physical address or a massive fortress. A real home is discovering that one fiercely damaged person who examines all of your darkest red flags and completely refuses to abandon you. After 15 exhausting years of outrunning her demons, Emma is finally hitting the brakes. The suffocating chase has officially concluded, and for the first time, she can close her eyes and simply breathe.